Dr. Alina stood at the edge of something incredible. The massive crystal towers in front of her reached toward alien skies, sparkling like diamonds under 3 different suns. This wasn't Earth anymore. This was Kepler-4 to be home to the most powerful group of aliens in the galaxy, the Galactic Council. 3 years ago, everything changed for humanity. A strange ship appeared near Jupiter, bigger than anything humans had ever built. Instead of weapons, it carried a message. We weren't alone in the universe, not even close. There were 12 different alien species out there, all working together under something called the Galactic Council. They had been watching Earth for decades, waiting for the right moment to make contact. Alina remembered that first day perfectly. She was working late in her lab when the emergency alert started going off. Every telescope on Earth was pointing at the same thing, a ship that defied everything we knew about physics. It hung in space like a floating city, beautiful and terrifying. At the same time, now here she was, representing all of humanity in front of beings that looked like living crystals, giant insects, and things she couldn't even describe. The council chamber was enormous, with seats designed for creatures of every shape and size imaginable. The air itself seemed to hum with translation devices. Turning alien thoughts into words she could understand, Elder Zephyrion sat at the center. Of it all, he was from the Altarian Collective, and he was old, older than human civilization itself. His crystal body caught the light and threw rainbows across the chamber walls. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Dr. Alina of Earth, his translated voice filled the chamber. Your species has finally reached the stars. We welcome you to the greater galactic community. Alina took a deep breath. This was the moment that would decide humanity's future. Had spent months preparing for this speech, knowing that every word mattered. The other council members watched her with eyes, sensors, and organs she couldn't name. Some looked curious. Others seemed worried. Thank you for this honor, Alina began, her voice steady, despite her racing heart. Humanity is grateful for this opportunity to join the galactic community. But before we move forward, there are things about our species you need to understand. She activated the holographic display she had brought from Earth. Images of human history began to play in the air. Above her, cities rising and falling, wars and peace treaties, moments of incredible beauty and terrible destruction. We are not a simple species, Alina continued. In our short time on Earth, we have built wonders and made mistakes. We have fought wars that nearly destroyed us, and then worked together to heal our world. We are capable of great kindness and terrible fury. The images showed human achievements, art, music, scientific discoveries, acts of heroism and sacrifice. But they also showed the darker side, conflicts, environmental damage, the struggles that had shaped humanity into what it was today. We know what it means to survive, Alina said, watching the alien faces around her. Our planet was not always kind to us. We faced ice ages, natural disasters, diseases that killed millions. But we never gave up. We adapted. We learned. Grew stronger. Elder Zephyrion leaned forward, his crystal form reflecting the holographic images. Your species shows remarkable resilience. This is why the Council believes you would benefit from our guidance. Alina felt a chill run down her spine. Was something in the way he said guidance that didn't sound right? She had studied these aliens for 3 years, learning their languages, their customs, their history. The Council had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, bringing peace and stability to countless worlds. But peace at what cost? We appreciate your offer, Alina replied carefully. But humanity has always valued independence. We work best as partners, not followers. We can contribute much to the galactic community, but only if we remain free to be ourselves. The chamber fell silent. Lena could feel the tension in the air as the council members exchanged glances through their various forms of communication. Some whispered in languages that sounded like music. Others communicated through flashing lights or chemical signals her human senses couldn't detect. Yes. Freedom is a dangerous concept, said Ambassador Kethalar of the Sindari Union. His insect-like The appearance was unsettling, but his translated voice was smooth and reasonable. Young species often confuse freedom with chaos. The Council has brought order to a chaotic universe. Elena's training kicked in. She had expected this response. The Council had a pattern. They approached new species with gifts and friendship, slowly taking control until the newcomers became dependent on them. It had happened to every species that joined them, but humanity was different. With respect, Ambassador Elena said, "We have studied your history. Every species that joined the Council gave up something important: their independence, their unique cultures, their right to determine their own path. We will not make that same choice." The images above her changed, showing Earth's nations working together despite their differences. Humans helping each other during disasters, the International Space Station floating peacefully in orbit with crew members from different countries working side by side. "We can cooperate without surrendering who we are," Elena explained. "We can trade, share knowledge, and work together for mutual benefit. But we will remain human, with all that entails." Elder Zephyrian's crystal body seemed to dim slightly. "And if your species proves difficult to integrate," Lena met his alien gaze directly. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the moment when humanity's future would be decided by her next words. "Then you will discover something important about humans," she said, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. "We survived. On a world that tried to eliminate us countless times. We fought through ice ages, plagues, asteroid impacts, and our own mistakes. We are still here because we do not give up and we do not surrender." She paused, letting her words sink in before delivering the warning that would echo through galactic history. "Treat us as equals, and we will be your greatest allies. We will share our knowledge, our art, our unique perspective on the universe. But try to control us, try to diminish us, try to make us into something we are not." Telena's voice grew cold. "And you will learn why we are the species that survived when so many others on our world did not." The silence in the chamber was deafening. Lena could see the Council members processing her words, weighing the implications. These beings had ruled the galaxy for millennia without challenge. They were used to younger species bowing before their wisdom and power, but humanity was offering something different: partnership instead of submission, cooperation instead of control. And wrapped within that offer was a promise and a threat that would soon reshape the entire galaxy. As Elena stood there waiting for their response, she couldn't know that her words had already sealed humanity's fate. The Council would make their choice, and soon the entire galaxy would learn the price of underestimating the species from the small blue planet called Earth. Captain Chen stared out at the stars from the bridge of the UES horizon, one of only 12 human ships allowed to travel the Council's trade routes. 2 years had passed since Elena's meeting with the Galactic Council, and humanity was living what many called a golden age. Diseases that had plagued Earth for centuries were gone, wiped out by Council medicine. Energy was unlimited thanks to their fusion technology. Food shortages were a thing of the past. Everyone back on Earth was celebrating. The news channels couldn't stop talking about the miracle cures, the clean energy, the incredible alien technologies that were transforming human civilization. Children were growing up in a world where cancer was just a word in history books, where pollution was disappearing, where the stars themselves seemed within reach. But Chen had been out here among the aliens long enough to notice things that didn't add up. Small things at first, restrictions on where human ships could go, always explained as safety protocols. Monitoring systems installed on every human vessel, supposedly to help with navigation. Communication delays that seemed too long, too. "Convenient, Captain," Lieutenant Park called from her station. She was his communications officer, a brilliant young woman who had learned to speak 3 different alien languages. "We're getting another route change from Council control. They want us to avoid the Proxima sector entirely." Chen frowned. "That was the 3rd route change this month. And always for the same reason: elevated cosmic radiation levels or unstable space conditions." But Chen had been a pilot long enough to know space, and there was nothing dangerous about those sectors. Any explanation this time? He asked. Same as always, sir. They say it's for our own protection. Chen was starting to hate that phrase. Everything the council did was supposedly for humanity's protection. They protected human colonies by limiting their communication with Earth. They protected human ships by restricting their travel routes. They protected human technology by requiring all modifications to go through council approval. The protection was starting to feel a lot like a cage. His chance to learn more came during a routine diplomatic dinner on Kepler Station, massive space hub where dozens of alien species traded and mingled. Ambassador Catheller of the Sindari Union was there, his insect-like appearance drawing curious stares from newer species. Chen had learned to read the subtle movements of the ambassador's compound eyes, and tonight they seemed especially bright.
Captain.
Chen Cathaller clicked through his translator. How are you finding your trade missions? I trust the Council's routes are serving humanity well. Very well, Chen replied carefully. Though I sometimes wonder why we can't explore beyond the approved zones. Human curiosity is hard to satisfy. Cathaller's mandibles twitched in what Chen had learned was amusement. Your species does show remarkable enthusiasm for exploration. The Council simply wishes to ensure you develop along proper channels. There are dangers in the galaxy that young species are not prepared to face. What kind of dangers? Chen pressed. The ambassador's compound eyes seemed to dim slightly, the kind that destroyed the last species who refused guidance. The Helix Confederacy thought themselves ready for unlimited freedom. Their worlds are now silent monuments to the folly of premature independence. Chen felt a chill. He had never heard of the Helix Confederacy before? None of the Council's historical records mentioned them? When he asked other Council species about them later that evening, he got the same response, nervous glances and quick changes of subject. That night, unable to sleep, Chen made a decision that would change everything. He asked Lieutenant Park to do something technically illegal, probe deeper into the Council's communication networks while they were docked at the station. Sir, if they catch us... Park began. They won't, Chen said. You're the best communication specialist in the human fleet. If anyone can do this quietly, it's you. Park worked through the night, carefully threading through layers of alien security protocols. What she found buried deep in the Council's data networks made Chen's blood run cold. The file was labeled Containment Protocol, Species 247. Humans. Chen's hands shook as he read through the detailed plans. Every gift the Council had given humanity came with hidden strings. The medical technology that cured diseases. It also made humans dependent on regular treatments that only the Council could provide. The fusion reactors that powered Earth's cities. They required fuel that could only be processed on Council worlds. But the worst part was the timeline. Phase 1 had been integration, getting humans addicted to Council technology. Phase 2 was isolation, cutting off human expansion and limiting their movements. Phase 3, scheduled to begin in just 6 months, was complete dependence, shutting down all human manufacturing and making Earth entirely reliant on Council support. The final phase made Chen sick to read. Species domestication complete was the clinical term they used. Humans would become a client species, intelligent enough to be useful, but too dependent to ever challenge Council authority. Their children would grow up in Council schools learning Council values, slowly forgetting what it meant to be human. Captain Park whispered, her face pale in the blue glow of the alien computers. There's more. Look at this section about problematic individuals. Chen read the list and felt his heart stop. Elena's name was there, marked for re-education because of her resistance to integration. 8. So were the names of Earth's top military leaders, independent scientists, and anyone who had ever questioned Council policies. They weren't planning to destroy humanity. They were planning to remake it into something completely different. How long do we have? Chen asked. According to this, the final isolation protocols begin in 3 months. After that, no human ship will be allowed to leave Council-approved zones. Earth will be completely cut off from its colonies. Chen stared at the stolen data, his mind racing. Everything made sense now. The restrictions, The monitoring, the constant talk about protection and guidance. The Council wasn't helping humanity grow stronger. They were systematically making them weaker, more dependent. It's easier to control. But there was something the Council didn't understand about humans. They had studied human history, but they had focused on the cooperation, the civilization, the art and science. They had missed the most important part. Humans didn't stay trapped. Can you copy all of this without them knowing? Chen asked. Park nodded. Already done, sir. Multiple encrypted copies. Good, send them through the backup channels to Earth. Make sure Alina gets a copy, and General Hawkins, and anyone else who might listen. As Park worked to transmit the stolen information, Chen looked out at the stars surrounding Kepler Station. Dozens of alien ships moved through the space lanes, following routes established by the Council, carrying cargo approved by the Council, crewed by species that had long ago given up their independence for the promise of safety and prosperity. Council had ruled this galaxy for thousands of years. They had turned conquest into a science, slavery into a gift. They were masters of making cages feel like homes. But they had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that humans, like every other species before them, would choose comfort over freedom. They thought that medicine and technology and empty promises would be enough to make humanity forget what it meant to be free. Chen smiled grimly as he watched the alien ships. The Council was about to learn something that the ice ages, the asteroids, and countless natural disasters had failed to teach Earth's other species. Humans didn't just survive by adapting to their environment. Sometimes they survived by changing it completely. The trap was closing around humanity, but for the first time in galactic history, the prey had seen it coming. They were ready to bite back. President Okafor sat in the emergency meeting room deep beneath the White House, staring at intelligence reports that confirmed humanity's worst nightmare. The holographic displays around her showed Council fleets moving into position around every major human world. Mars, Luna Base, the mining colonies around Jupiter, the research stations near Saturn. All of them were now surrounded by alien warships. The official story was protection. The Council claimed that dangerous pirates from the Omega Nebula were planning attacks on human settlements. Every news channel was broadcasting the same message. The wise and benevolent Council was once again protecting humanity from threats they couldn't handle alone. But Okafor knew the truth. The stolen data from Captain Chen had arrived just in time. The Council wasn't protecting human colonies. They were imprisoning them. Madam President, Defense Secretary Williams said, his voice tight with controlled anger. The Council fleets have taken strategic positions around all our worlds. They're calling it a protective formation, but any military officer can see what this really is. Dr. Alina, now serving as Secretary of Xenological Affairs, stood before the massive wall. Display showing human space. Red dots marked Council ships, and there were hundreds of them. Every escape route was blocked. Every trade lane was controlled. Every human world was effectively under siege. They're not going to attack us, Alina said, her voice grim.
That's
not how they work. They're going to squeeze us slowly until we have no choice but to accept their complete control. The reports kept coming in. Council inspectors were going through every human shipyard, supposedly checking for safety violations. Human vessels were being grounded for routine maintenance that never seemed to end. Trade agreements were being renegotiated to cut off Earth's access to raw materials from the outer colonies. How long do we have? Okafor asked. According to their timeline, maybe 3 months before we're completely dependent on them for everything, Alina replied. Food, medicine, energy, transportation, they'll control it all. General Hawkins, head of Earth's Special Operations Command, had been quiet throughout the briefing. Now she stepped forward, and for the first time in hours, Okafor saw something. Other than despair in someone's eyes, Madam President Hawkins said quietly, "There's something you need to know, something we've been working on in secret for the past 3 years." The room fell silent. Even Alina looked surprised. 3 years ago, right after first contact, I convinced a small group of scientists and engineers to start a black project. We called it Phoenix. Our job was simple: figure out how Council technology worked and build our own versions that they couldn't control. Hawkins activated her own holographic display. Images appeared of ships unlike anything Okafor had ever seen, sleek angular vessels that looked nothing like the curved, organic designs the Council preferred. We've been building these in secret facilities throughout the outer solar system. Asteroid bases, hidden shipyards in the moons of Saturn and Jupiter, underground factories on Pluto. Every time the Council gave us new technology, we tore it apart and figured out how to make it ourselves. The President stared at the images. How many ships? Enough, Hawkins said simply. But that's not the best part. We didn't just copy their technology, we improved it. Human engineering has always been about making things better, faster, more efficient. We've had 3 years to study their weapons, their shields, their engines. She touched a control, and the display changed to show weapon specifications. Their shields are designed to stop their own weapons. But we've developed something they've never seen. Pure kinetic projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds. No energy signature to track, no exotic particles to deflect. Just solid matter moving very, very fast. Lena leaned forward, suddenly understanding. They've been fighting the same way for thousands of years. They're not prepared for something completely different. Exactly, Hawkins confirmed. Every species that joined the Council fought the same way they did. Honor-bound warfare with rules and protocols. Humans. ... double quotes. She smiled coldly. We fight to win. President Okafor felt hope stirring for the first time in months. What do you need from me? Authorization to activate Phoenix? Once we do this, there's no going back. The Council will know that we've been preparing for this moment. They'll realize that every gift they gave us, every piece of technology they shared, we've been using it to build weapons they can't defend against. The weight of the decision pressed down on Okafor's shoulders. She thought about the children. On Earth, who had never known disease thanks to Council medicine, the cities powered by Council fusion reactors, the millions of humans living in the outer colonies who depended on Council protection. But she also thought about what those same humans would become under Council rule. Servants in their own homes. Pets who had forgotten how to be wild. General, she said finally, you have my authorization. Activate Project Phoenix. Hawkins nodded and began entering codes into her secure communicator. Across the solar system, hidden bases began receiving the signal they had waited 3 years to hear, on Titan. Massive hangar doors opened in what had appeared to be a simple research station. Ships emerged, not the smooth, artistic designs the Council preferred, but angular. Practical vessels built for one purpose. In the asteroid belt, mining stations that had seemed abandoned suddenly came to life. Docking bays opened to reveal fleets that had been hiding in plain sight. On Pluto, beneath facilities the Council had dismissed as unimportant. Launch tubes opened to release ships that had never appeared on any official roster. President Okafor watched the activation reports roll in. Hundreds of ships, thousands of personnel, weapons and technology that represented humanity's best hope for freedom. There's something else, Alina said quietly. When I gave my warning to the Council 5 years ago, I meant every word. Don't think they truly understood what I was telling them. She gestured to the display showing human space, now ringed with Council forces. They see this as a standard containment operation. They've done it a dozen times before with other species. But they made one critical error. What's that? Okafor asked. Elena's eyes were hard as diamonds. They assumed we would be grateful for our cage. They forgot that humans have never been a domesticated species. We're predators who learn to cooperate, not prey animals who learn to hide. The activation signals kept coming in. Ship after ship reported ready. Weapon systems online, personnel at battle stations. How long before they realize what's happening? Okafor asked. Hawkins checked her displays. Their surveillance network is designed to watch for known threats. Our ships don't match any profile in their databases. They're invisible to their sensors. We could be in position to strike before they even know we're coming. President Okafor looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. 3 years ago, they had been explorers reaching for the stars. Then they had become allies in what they thought was a partnership. Now they were about to become something the galaxy had never seen before, a a species that refused to be tamed. "Send a message to Captain Chen and all our people out there," she ordered. "Tell them it's time to come home. And tell them to bring everything they've learned about Council fleet positions and weaknesses." As orders went out across human space, as hidden fleets powered up their engines and prepared for launch, as thousands of humans who had spent years preparing for this moment finally got their chance to act, one thing became clear. The Council had built the perfect trap. They had surrounded humanity with overwhelming force. They had cut off every escape route and blocked every trade lane. But they had made one fatal mistake. They had forgotten that sometimes the most dangerous animal is the one with nothing left to lose. The trap was closing around humanity. But this time, the prey had teeth. The first blow came at exactly 0300 Galactic Standard Time. It was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Across 17 star systems, Council monitoring stations simply vanished. No distress calls. No explosions visible on sensors. One moment they were there, tracking every ship movement in their sectors. The next moment, they were gone. Admiral Chen floated in zero gravity aboard the UES Retribution, watching the tactical displays light up with success reports. Each green dot represented a Council surveillance post that had been eliminated by teams of humans who had spent 3 years learning to move through space like ghosts. The humans had used the Council's own blind spots against them. Every monitoring station was designed to watch for ships and energy signatures. None of them were looking for humans in simple spacesuits, drifting through the void like debris, carrying small antimatter charges that left no trace. "Phase 1 complete," reported Commander Taylor from the communications station. "All surveillance. Networks in the target sectors are down. They're flying blind." Chen smiled grimly. The Council had made their first mistake by assuming humans would fight like civilized species. They expected formal declarations, honor-bound combat, rules of engagement. Instead, they got something they had never encountered: humans who understood that survival was more important than honor. "Begin Phase 2, Chen ordered. Across human space, the real ships began to move. Phoenix-class destroyers emerged from asteroid fields where they had been hiding for months, their black holes absorbed light instead of reflecting it, making them nearly invisible against the darkness of space. Human engineering had taken Council stealth technology and pushed it beyond anything the aliens thought possible. The Council's response came 6 hours later. It was everything Chen had hoped for. Elder Zephyrian's voice echoed across emergency channels throughout the galaxy, his crystal form flickering with outrage on every screen. "The species known as humans have committed unprovoked acts of aggression against Council installations," the ancient alien declared. "We demand immediate surrender and the return of all stolen Council technology. Those who comply will be treated with mercy and relocated to appropriate re-education facilities." Chen laughed at the translation. Even now, facing something completely outside their experience, the Council still thought in terms of re-education and relocation. They couldn't imagine a species that would rather die fighting than live in chains. "Re-education facilities," muttered Lieutenant Rivera from her weapons station. "They still think we're going to roll over and beg for treats." The Council's fleets began moving to intercept what they thought were scattered groups of human raiders. Their ships were magnificent, vast crystalline structures that had ruled the galaxy for millennia, carrying weapons that could shatter planets and shields that had never been breached, but they were moving according to established patterns, following protocols that had worked against every other species they had conquered. They had no idea they were flying into a trap designed by minds that thought completely differently. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV called Ensign Brooks from sensors. Council heavy cruiser, Altarian design. They're following standard patrol routes." Chen studied the tactical display. The Council ship was massive, easily 10 times the size of his destroyer. Its shields could deflect energy weapons that would vaporize a human vessel. Its armor was nearly impenetrable. By every measure that mattered to galactic warfare, the UES Retribution was completely outmatched. "Range to target?" Chen asked. 50,000 kilometers in closing. They haven't detected us yet. Perfect. "Weapons. Prepare kinetic strike package." The beauty of human weapons wasn't in their power, it was in their simplicity. All council ships carried exotic energy cannons and particle beam arrays. Human ships fired chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds. No energy signature to track, no exotic particles to deflect. It's just pure physics doing what physics did best. Firing, Rivera announced. The projectile was barely the size of a basketball, but it was moving at 30% the speed of light. The Council ship's sensors never saw it coming. Their shields, designed to stop energy weapons, offered no protection against solid matter moving that fast. The impact was devastating. The Council cruiser broke apart like a crystal struck by a hammer, its debris field spreading across thousands of kilometers. The destruction was so complete that it took the Council fleet commanders several minutes to realize one of their ships had been destroyed. But the real shock came when they tried to figure out how it had happened. Their sensors showed no enemy vessels in the area. No energy weapons had been fired, as far as their instruments could tell. Their ship had simply exploded for no reason. Chen watched the confusion ripple through Council communications. Orders and counter-orders filled the airwaves as commanders tried to understand what they were facing. Some thought it was a new weapon. Others suspected sabotage from within their own ranks. None of them guessed the truth that humans had built. Ships their sensors couldn't detect and weapons their minds couldn't comprehend. Second target approaching, Brooks reported. Council Dreadnought Sindari configuration. This one was even bigger. A mobile fortress carrying enough firepower to level a planet. Ambassador Cathaler himself was aboard, commanding the response. To what the Council still thought was a minor rebellion, Chen's tactical display showed the massive alien ship lumbering through space, confident in its invincibility. Around it, smaller Council vessels moved in perfect formation, following battle plans that had conquered dozens of worlds. All ships, this is Admiral Chen, he broadcast on secure channels. Execute swarm protocol. Across the system, dozens of human ships that had been hiding in the shadows began to move. They didn't attack the Council formation head-on like civilized species would. Instead, they struck from every direction at once. Targeting engines, weapons systems, command centers with surgical precision. The Council fleet found itself fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere. Ships would appear from empty space, fire their impossible weapons, and vanish before return fire could be targeted. Each strike was perfectly coordinated, but there was no central command structure to attack, no formation to break. Cathaler's dreadnought shuddered as kinetic projectiles punched through its armor, like it was made of paper. His compound eyes registered shock as reports flooded in from across his fleet. Ships that had never known defeat were being carved apart by weapons that shouldn't exist. "Where are they?" he demanded through his translator. "How are they targeting us?" His officers had no answers. The humans weren't fighting like any species in galactic history. They had no honor, no rules, no predictable patterns. They struck like space itself had turned hostile. Within 12 hours, the first battle of Proxima was over. Council ships that had entered the system, only 7 escaped. The rest were either destroyed or crippled beyond repair. Human casualties were minimal, 3 ships damaged, none destroyed. The news rippled across the galaxy like a shockwave. For the first time in thousands of years, a Council fleet had been defeated. It's not just defeated, humiliated by a species the Council had considered primitive. Dr. Alina, now commanding the science fleet aboard the UES Retribution, composed the message that would be broadcast to every world in Council space. Her voice was calm, almost conversational, but her words carried the weight of a declaration that would reshape the galaxy. To the Galactic Council and all member species, she began, "You chose to betray the trust we offered. You chose to see partnership as weakness and cooperation as surrender. Now you face the consequences of that choice." The holographic image showed Alina standing on the bridge of her ship with the wreckage of Council vessels floating in the background. "We told you that humanity does not surrender. We warned you that we survived when other species did not. You thought those were empty words." She paused, her eyes hard as steel. "You were wrong. As her message spread across the galaxy, as Council worlds watched the impossible footage of their invincible fleets being destroyed by ships they couldn't see, one thing became clear: the age of Council dominance was ending. And the species they had tried to domesticate was about to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. The war had begun, and humanity intended to finish it. 2 years after the first human strike, the galaxy looked completely different. What had once been the peaceful, council-controlled space lanes were now scattered with the wreckage of 1,000 battles. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for centuries were now dangerous territories, where human raiders could appear from nowhere and disappear just as quickly. Captain Park floated in her command chair aboard the EU's Ghost, one of the new stealth ships designed specifically for deep strike operations. Her mission wasn't to destroy Council fleets. That job was mostly done. Instead, she was hunting something far more valuable: the Council's will to fight. The strategy had been Elena's idea. It was working better than anyone had expected. Instead of trying to match the Council's massive fleets in direct combat, humans had done what they did best. They had adapted. They struck supply convoys carrying food to Council worlds. They disabled communication relays, leaving entire sectors cut off from Central Command. They appeared at peaceful Council colonies just long enough to demonstrate that nowhere was safe, then vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Target acquired, reported Ensign Davis from the sensor station. Council Supply Convoy 3. Cargo ships with light escort. Looks like they're carrying medical supplies to the Vega colonies. Park studied the tactical display. The convoy was following standard protocols, moving in formation with their escort ships positioned to defend against conventional attacks. They had no idea that a human ship was watching them from less than 1,000 kilometers away. "Supplies going to military targets?" Park asked. "Negative, Captain. Sensor analysis shows civilian medical equipment and food supplies." Park nodded. That meant they wouldn't destroy the convoy, just disable it and let the Council rescue ships. Find it later. This wasn't about killing innocents. This was about showing the Council that their protection meant nothing when faced with an enemy they couldn't predict or counter. "Disable their engines and communications," Park ordered. Standard intimidation protocol. The attack lasted less than 30 seconds. Kinetic projectiles punched through the escort ship's engine compartments with surgical precision, leaving them alive but helpless. Cargo vessels found their communication systems mysteriously failing as human electronic warfare systems scrambled their signals then, just as quickly as they had appeared. The human ship was gone, leaving the disabled convoy floating in space with a simple message broadcast on all frequencies: "The Galactic Council cannot protect you. Consider your allegiances carefully." It was psychological warfare on a scale the galaxy had never seen. The Council had always ruled through the promise of protection and stability. But how could they promise protection when their own fleets were being picked apart by ghosts? The political effects were even more devastating than the military ones. On Kepler 4-4 to be, in the great crystal chambers where the Council had once ruled with absolute authority, Elder Zephyrian faced something he had never experienced in his 1,000-year lifetime: rebellion from within. Ambassador Cathaler stood before the assembled Council, his insect-like form trembling with barely controlled emotion. "The Terran humans have destroyed 60% of our fleet strength," he reported through his translator. "Our trade routes are unusable. Our colonies are living in fear. And now, ... He paused, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's crystal light. "Now the younger species are questioning our authority." It was true. The Rigel Consortium had already declared independence, taking their industrial worlds with them. The Centauri Alliance had stopped paying their Council taxes and expelled all Council administrators. 3 more species had opened secret negotiations with human representatives. Elder Zephyrian's crystal form seemed dimmer than it had 2 years ago, as if the stress of fighting an incomprehensible enemy was literally draining the light from his body. "How is this possible?" he asked, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "We have ruled the galaxy for millennia. No species has ever successfully resisted our guidance." The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Vexani of the younger Polaris species stepped forward, her blue-scaled form small among the ancient council members. She had been studying human warfare for months, trying to understand how such a primitive species could achieve the impossible. "With respect, Elder," she said, her voice carefully neutral, "I believe we fundamentally misunderstood what we were dealing with. We saw humans as another species to be guided and controlled. But they are something else entirely." She activated a holographic display showing battle footage from dozens of human attacks. Ships appearing from empty space, weapons that defied known physics tactics that seemed to break every rule of civilized warfare. "Look at their patterns," Dr. Vexani continued. "No other species fights like this. They don't seek glorious victory or honorable defeat. They fight to win, regardless of the cost, to tradition or dignity. They adapt their tactics constantly, never using the same approach twice." Elder Zephorian watched the recordings with growing horror. "They fight like ... like animals." No, Dr. Vexani corrected gently. "They fight like predators who learn to use tools. Every other species we've encountered evolved as prey animals who developed intelligence to hide from danger. Humans evolved as hunters who developed intelligence to better catch their prey." The implications of her words settled over the council chamber like a dark cloud. For thousands of years, they had been dealing with species that could be intimidated, controlled, or convinced to submit. But humans were something different. A species that had climbed to the top of their world's food chain and then reached for the stars. The final blow, too. Council authority came 6 months later, when President Okafor herself arrived at the ruins of what had once been the Council's greatest military base. The meeting took place aboard a neutral space station, with representatives from dozens of species watching the proceedings. Elder Zephorian looked ancient as he faced the human leader across the negotiating table. His crystal body was cracked and dim, aged beyond his species' normal lifespan by the impossible stress of fighting a war he couldn't understand. "We sought to prevent chaos," he said through the universal translator, his voice barely a whisper. "Your species seems so ... dangerous, so unpredictable. We thought guidance would help you reach your potential without threatening galactic stability." President Okafor studied the broken alien leader with something between pity and contempt. Her hair had gone completely silver during the war years, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. "You made the same mistake that predators have made throughout history," she replied. "You assumed that because you were bigger and older, you were automatically superior." She gestured to the holographic displays showing the current state of the galaxy. Council fleets reduced to scattered survivors, moved trade networks in chaos, member species declaring independence or switching sides daily. "The truth is simpler than you want to admit," Okafor continued. "You grew comfortable ruling the weak. When you encountered strength, you chose treachery over respect. You tried to turn us into pets instead of treating us as equals." The negotiations that followed were swift and decisive. The Galactic Council formally dissolved, its member species free to choose their own paths. Some aligned with humanity's new stellar coalition. Others formed independent alliances. A few tried to maintain the old ways, but found themselves increasingly isolated. Elder Zephorian signed the dissolution papers with appendages that shook with age and defeat. "What will you do now?" he asked Okafor. "Will you become the new rulers of the galaxy?" Okafor smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We tried to tell you years ago, humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to be free to explore it. The difference is that now, everyone knows the price of trying to cage us." As the former council members departed, their ancient authority finally broken, Dr. Alina completed her final report on the war. Her words would be studied by xenobiologists and historians for generations to come. The Galactic Council fell because they misunderstood the fundamental nature of the species they tried to control. They saw our cooperation and assumed we were weak. They saw our desire for peace and thought we were passive. They mistook our willingness to negotiate for an inability to fight. She paused in her recording, looking out at the stars that now belonged to a free galaxy. They forgot the most important lesson in human history, that some species survive by hiding from predators, and others survive by becoming the thing that predators fear. The council learned too late which kind of species they were dealing with. The galaxy that emerged from the ashes of council rule was messier, more chaotic, but infinitely more free. Trade flowed along new routes established by mutual agreement. Rather than ancient decree, young species explored regions that had been forbidden for millennia. Wars still happened, but they were honest conflicts between equals, not the systematic domination of the weak by the strong. And throughout it all, humanity's ships continued to patrol the space lanes, carrying a simple message to anyone who might. Dream of rebuilding the old empire? Some cages can be broken. Some species refuse to be tamed. And the galaxy is big enough for everyone who respects that truth.